Hi, it's Jeff. I wanted to talk a little bit about forgiveness. I actually call this sauntering to forgiveness, and I hope to explain that a little bit more. It's interesting, I just saw a recent article that said that therapy is much more effective than medication to address insomnia and sleep issues. And I find that interesting relative to mindful restoration and the practices that Sonia and I have worked on for a long time around the relaxation response, finding ways to help everyone achieve a different state of being, shift out of that sympathetic dominant active brain and find little ways to create a relaxation response. I'm equating this to forgiveness. Forgiveness is such a loaded term, I realize that. Something I've looked at over my life, for sure, with my dad passing away when I was 11, and being upset about that and doing some personal work around that, and yet my perspective on forgiveness might be a little bit different than what's out there, I think, relative to some of the techniques and practices that I've looked at over the recent years. My experience is that forgiveness is a process, for sure, and it can't be rushed. There's a slowing down that is inherent with forgiveness. And as you probably know, slowing down is not our typical state of being in our society and culture currently. But we know that we must slow down to feel. So in a yoga class I might lead, I definitely am finding ways to have people slow down, breathe a little bit more. So, slow down and breathe to be able to feel. And I looked up the word saunter. Saunter is to walk in a slow, relaxed manner without hurry or effort. To stroll, to amble, to wander, to meander. I mean, how much strolling and ambling and meandering have you done lately? And yet, in the early 20th century, a much simpler time, before there was technology, before everybody's head was down looking at something, actually people were looking around, seeing each other, experiencing each other, conversing, and there definitely was not any multitasking. So I think that we're conditioned into a collective conditioning into not creating an experience of, I'm going to say, forgiveness. That forgiveness is actually a present moment experience. That this is to say that we can practice it every day. I would say that we can practice forgiveness originally by forgiving ourselves. Forgiving ourselves by being in the present moment with intention. And I think that might sound contrite, and maybe it is. Maybe I'm not an intellectual. I think I'm fairly intelligent, but I'm not drawn to, I saw here the 9 steps. I'm not going to quote the site from here, but the 9 steps to forgiveness. I mean, that alone was daunting for me. Know exactly how you feel about what happened. Make a commitment to yourself to do what you need to do. Forgiveness does not necessarily mean reconciliation with the person that hurt you. Number 4, get the right perspective of what is happening. Recognize your primary distress is coming from, at the moment you feel, practice a simpler stress management technique. Give up expecting things from other people, and so on. I'm stressed just reading that. So this is to say, that's just more, for me, that's just more busyness. That's more mind. That's more to do. And I think we need a break from that. It makes me, right now, I didn't write this, but it makes me think about when, I haven't done this for a while, I kind of overdue, but I go out to the woods, I would say, the bush might be said, and it takes me about 3 days or so, once I'm out there, before there's that moment of, it's like I've arrived. It's like there's a knowing in that moment. It's like, whoa, this is the real me. This is a connection with myself intimately that I miss because I don't feel this all the time. And there's a sauntering that happens once I'm in that spot. I mean, in vacation it happens too. Going to a nice vacation time and hopefully not in a rush to see a bunch of things and be a tourist, but to slow down and to have that moment where I'm kind of returning to myself. So I think that is a form of forgiveness. That's what I'm trying to get to here. It's a not doing. It's definitely not a mental process, as I hinted at earlier. There's lots of that out there, and if that's attractive to you, to have more information and facilitation and techniques to practice forgiveness, then by all means, that's not wrong or bad. I just know for me that didn't complete the process for me. There was something left undone. It's because I was thinking rather than feeling. It's pretty simple, really. So, I've had lots of personal experiences regarding this process of slowing down, of sauntering. I remember when I worked on the dish crew at Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health in Lenox, Massachusetts. I was washing dishes, and I was the doobie, the good boy or something, that self-esteem kind of, I washed dishes as fast as I possibly could. There were 500 or so dishes to wash every day and get in the dishwasher. And I remember the day that my supervisor came over and put his hand on my shoulder, and it's like we took a breath, and it was a pretty enlightening conversation in that moment around my work ethic, if you will, and my motivation around work shifted dramatically in that time there, where I began to recognize that slowing down, I was not present with the experience I was creating, and in fact, without it sounding too woo-woo out there, it's like I was putting that frenetic energy into the activity and the plates, if you will, that I was cleaning. So that was one of many experiences where I began to feel the experience of slowing down, because it's not really my nature, growing up, or as a young man was kind of A++ type, I'd say. As an air traffic controller, I had to go fast. That was my job. So I learned that it's not in the doing. Eventually, even that forgiveness for myself was a recognition, an intention in that slowing down about the places that I couldn't forgive myself up until then, that I recognized, in those moments where it happened, an event happened, a place where I judged myself or criticized myself, and another, I'll speak to that here at the end, that in that moment it was because I wasn't able to saunter. I wasn't able to slow down in the moment that whatever that event was happened. I was in reaction. I was in a programmed response, if you will. So I've really appreciated that, and I'm hoping this is landing for you. And I even, my invitation for you is to begin to saunter. You can't necessarily go out to the bush for 3 days. That would be great. If you can do that, please do. Or a vacation. But I would offer, down below on this little site, I think I'm gonna put a link to some sauntering music from Beethoven's Emperor Piano Concerto. The second movement is definitely some sauntering music, and I highly encourage you to take a listen or find your own sauntering music, or whatever creates that for you. Because at the end of the day, I'm looking for opportunities to have that break from my conditioned responses, to feel, and then link that felt experience with an intention. Intention to look at those places where I know I'm not doing that. Like me sometimes eating, and it's just rapid fire, and I'm scarfing it down, and I'm not sauntering around food. Or me with my kids as control, like I got to hurry them up, or I've got to, it's a place where I can feel I'm ramping up, and all I'm saying is finding other places where I can do that. I can practice. I can go for a walk. I can do some mindful rest kind of relaxation response practices. I can find ways to feel that sauntering, that slowing down, and then begin to integrate it with intention into those other activities that I know are more challenging, that I'm not able to forgive in those moments. And I'll complete that by saying, one of the primary places for me around forgiveness was myself, that I recognized, and this even hints at kind of archetypes and personal development in the psyche, is that, when I was little, I could see there was a beautiful innocence. And I see that in kids. I saw it in my kids growing up too. And there's a point of forgetfulness, of the ending of that innate connection to that divine self, if you will. And I think that's something to hold as a place of forgiveness too, that I forgive myself for that disconnection that happened, that my world began, and family and relationships and school and all the shoulds and shouldn'ts and etc. And I you can see I feel that. I forgive myself for that disconnection, and so my practice as a seeker, as a person that's coming back to freedom and connection to the true self, that's something for me to acknowledge. And I would end this by saying, I haven't even talked about the other person. I hinted at it. I don't think it's about them. I think all I have, I could list a gazillion reasons in the 19 steps of why I need to something with someone else. I need to be aware of the places that something happened, it happened, and someone else was involved. I need to first forgive myself for not being able to saunter through that event. I get that sometimes they were big and challenging. Mine were. And I understand now that it is possible for me to see that as an event that I wasn't present, and forgive myself for that. And in turn, it only follows that I recognize that other person that was involved in that had whatever activity that they did, they weren't sauntering either. They were in some response, some reaction, and I forgive them. I forgive them because I forgive myself. I think that's it. I hope this serves you in some way.